Hello everyone, and welcome to this session on Microsoft Surface and Microsoft Teams. My name is Michael Palantonio. It's my pleasure to be joining you live here today for this session. We're so glad that you were able to join us here in Microsoft Teams to talk about Microsoft Teams. I'm going to go ahead and say hello in the chat from Seattle, Washington, which is where I'm joining you live from today. So hello across continents and oceans. I wish I could be there in person with you, but I am thrilled that we are able to at least do this virtually. It makes it a little bit more exciting and breaks up our day, to be sure, to be able to be with you virtually here in this space together. So before we dive in, I do want to make sure that you're comfortable with the platform. If you are unfamiliar with Teams, I know many of us have been using it for quite some time now, but if you are unfamiliar, so if there is a little chat icon in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, I'll invite you to go ahead and click that to expand the chat panel, which will appear on the right-hand side of your screen. Please feel free to add any color commentary that you might have throughout the course of this session today. And if you have any questions, please feel free to type them into that chat panel. We will be reserving some time at the end of the session today to be able to make sure that we have addressed any of the questions that you might have that were not already answered throughout the course of the presentation. So again, please feel free to ask any questions. We will be reserving time at the end. And with that, let's dive in and talk about Microsoft Teams and Surface. So this has been, as we all know, as we need no reminding, quite the year. We have seen on the organizational side, on the corporate side, companies, businesses, organizations go through, in some cases, years worth of digital transformation in the span of a few short months at the beginning of the global pandemic. Now, of course, we have been in this state of remote and hybrid work for several months and even more than a year in many cases, depending on where we are worldwide. So we have gotten a sense of what it is like to be working remotely, and then hopefully, in some cases, we are able to at least look forward to the glimmer of hope, the possibility that we might be eventually returning to offices in some cases. And when that happens, some people will be working in person in the offices, but we still expect to have remote colleagues into the indefinite future. Now, Microsoft Teams is essentially the glue that holds together an organization. It was designed with deep, deep ties from the beginning into the entire suite of Microsoft 365. So all of an organization, a company's work happens within Microsoft Teams, and it ties into all of their PowerPoint documents, their Word documents, their Excel files. It ties deeply into SharePoint, so that shared document libraries, for example, are reflected in the structure of Teams. So none of this is happening in a silo. It's all integrated and designed throughout the entire Microsoft 365 suite. Now, obviously, as we know, we can use Teams for things like video calling. We're doing that right now. We have some additional functionality that we're going to be sharing and talking about through the course of this session today. But above and beyond just the video calling, of course, there's things like chat, and we mentioned those shared document libraries, and just that deep integration with the rest of the Microsoft 365 stack. In so many instances, we've seen people sometimes confused about what is the use case and what is the value of Teams above and beyond email, because we are used to using email throughout the course of our professional lives. Things that could be Teams and the chat functionality in Teams kind of lets email stay where email is best, which is a formal letter-style correspondence, typically with people external to an organization. Whereas, hey, can I pick up some coffee on the way in for you? Or are you going to be joining this meeting? What do you make of that thing that we just received from that client? That can be a Teams message, a Teams chat, and does not need to be an email clogging up email inboxes. So I know that we have some general familiarity with Teams. I would love to know in the chat, though, what your role is and what your comfort level, what your knowledge level with Teams is. So let me know in the chat, if you're so inclined, how familiar you are with Teams, how much you've been using it, and just what your familiarity level and knowledge level is with Teams so far. So let's look at some of the features that are currently available in Teams. It's very difficult to talk about new features in Teams because there are so many new features coming out all the time. So we have the new features, and then they get superseded by the new features. And this happens on a monthly and sometimes weekly basis as far as what the new features of Teams are. I'm going to do my best to keep things organized by what is generally currently available, and then what is coming in the next few weeks and months, and what to expect as far as Teams as a platform. So one of the things that we've been hearing about, I'm sure that you've been reading it, perhaps you've even been feeling it as well, is this idea of kind of digital burnout. It is not necessarily a natural or at least familiar thing for humans to be sitting in front of their computers all day long looking at boxes of their colleagues. It can be a little bit draining as far as our cognitive load goes, and we can sometimes feel like we're more on the spot. Whereas if we're in a room physically together, we give focus to the person who is speaking, and the others in the room around us, we're aware of their presence, but they're not necessarily spotlighted the way that they sometimes are when we meet on a digital meeting platform. So one of the ways that we are trying to mitigate that feeling of digital burnout and that feeling of unnaturalness is with our together mode. So using the same technology that we use for background replacement, we're able to make it appear as though everyone is in a more comfortable location together, like a cafe, if you can remember what it feels like to be in a cafe. Coming soon, we're going to have the ability to make custom backgrounds, so they can even be branded with a company's logo, for example, so that we can have that custom and bespoke feeling. We can all feel like we are in that common meeting room at our organization, even though we are all joining digitally and virtually from the comforts and sometimes the inconvenience of our own home. More like the sushi restaurant feel here. Outdoor Greek amphitheater, if that's something that is familiar to you, or perhaps even just the more ornate study hall or lecture hall. We have a variety of options available when it comes to together mode. We also recently introduced breakout rooms. So this was one of the things that we heard a lot from customer feedback. It's great to have everyone together in a meeting, and of course the numbers that we are able to accommodate in those meetings are ever expanding. But sometimes we want to break out into smaller groups and have discussions. And being able to manage that was a little bit tricky before. So now we have breakout rooms, and this is generally available now in Teams. So smaller sections of all of the attendees can be broken off into these virtual breakout rooms. They can have their own conversations. So maybe where it's a one-to-many format in the full Teams meeting, then we can go into breakout rooms and have an actual conversation with a smaller and more manageable group of colleagues. And then we can all come back and share our findings and our knowledge that we arrived at together in the full meeting. So breakout rooms are now currently available in Microsoft Teams. Another thing that we wanted to add was ways that we could kind of gauge the temperature of the room without saying, okay, everybody come off mute and let's do a round robin and let me pick on call on who I see here. How do you feel? And it takes 7 seconds for them to unmute their microphone and actually say something. We now have live reactions in Microsoft Teams. So this should be general availability. Obviously, it depends on worldwide rollouts and that sort of thing, but this has been general availability for some time now. So we have this little raise hand icon up here. You can also use that to do the various heart reactions, laughing, clapping, hearts, applause, that sort of thing. So you can very easily react to what someone is saying without interrupting them or just unmuting yourself to ha 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 and then mute yourself again. It's a little bit more natural in a way that you can kind of interact with colleagues, and if you are the one presenting, you can kind of see how people are feeling as you're going throughout the course of your presentation. Oops. So one of the other things that we're able to do is do recordings and transcripts. So being able to follow up on what has been agreed upon in a meeting, particularly if you're unfortunate enough to be in the position of being back-to-back as far as your calendar. So many of us are seeing these blocks just appear and our calendar fill up like Tetris blocks, which is an unfortunate fact of life for so many of us right now. So being able to follow up on what was agreed upon in a meeting and look back, even if you weren't able to attend that meeting, is very important to keep people together. So recordings and transcripts are now available. That can be enabled in Microsoft Teams, or if it's not available, I believe it's becoming available this month in the next, I think, 2 weeks or so, general availability. But so just as we can now currently record a meeting in Microsoft Teams, we will be able to turn on transcription. And it is intelligent enough to be able to attribute what is being spoken to the person who is saying it. So if someone is hearing impaired, they can very easily follow along with the rest of their colleagues. And after the fact, you'll be able to see what was said, so you can scroll through quickly and even search as well. In that same vein, Meeting Recap will aggregate, if you will, the recording, the transcript, any notes, files that were shared, and of course the transcript as well, just to make it a little bit easier to follow up on everything that was discussed in that meeting. Now, there's also, we saw those live reactions. When you're in a meeting, sometimes you want to take a poll to be able to see how people are feeling and get specific responses to a question. With Microsoft Forms integration, we can now launch a poll from within a Microsoft Teams meeting. So to do that, I'm going to walk you through it. This is currently available now. If we're in the actual chat you see here on the left-hand side, we have the chat here icon, and we're in the meeting, we can click on this little plus button right here to add something to this meeting. We want to add a tab, so we are going to search up here for Microsoft Forms. So I type F-O-R-M-S, and there's Forms that appears right there. So I click on Forms, and it allows us to prepare a poll ahead of time. So we don't have to do this in the heat of the moment when we are in the meeting. We can do this the day before or in the lead-up time to that meeting. So let's go ahead and save a poll here. Create a new poll. So now polls has been added up here to one of the tabs in this meeting. So we want to create a new poll. We can ask a question, so we can type in something like, where are you joining from today? Then we can add as many answers as we want, and we can even allow for multiple answers to be selected if we want to allow for that. We save, and then we have this poll ready to launch at our whim whenever the appropriate moment strikes. So then when we are in the meeting, you can see now, because we added that Forms tab in the meeting beforehand, we now have this Forms icon up here in the top. So when it is time to launch this poll, when we want to find out where everyone is joining from, I have access to be able to launch this poll. So I launch, and then this appears for everyone so that they can see these are the options. They can select and submit. And depending on how you configured that poll, you can have it so that everyone can see the answers in real time in the chat panel of the meeting, or you can keep that information private to yourself. So that's some of what has recently been rolled out and what is making its way to general availability worldwide. But you might be asking, but what's new? Is the Teams team working on anything? What do they have cooking over there? Well, the answer is quite a bit. Microsoft Teams is an area of extreme importance for Microsoft, and it is receiving quite a bit of investment, which is why we are seeing so many new features rolling out on such a fast cadence, which makes it difficult from our perspective sometimes to keep up with and stay on top of all of the new features that are being released. We are going to look at some of them here today, just so that you have a sense of what to expect and basically where we're going with Teams as a platform. So staying engaged during a meeting can be a challenge, particularly if, as I'm sorry to say you are in right now, your speaker is not particularly engaging, for example. So being able to focus in on what is being said without having to manipulate the user interface too much, without having to click too many buttons. So this is something that we heard from customers. There are ways to change the views, but it almost requires too much work on the individual user's part. So we are introducing and will be rolling out dynamic view. So rather than having to rely on you to sort out the view depending on the context of what is happening in the meeting, dynamic view is going to be able to intelligently switch that for you. So you can stay focused on the conversation, focused on the meeting, without having to be clicking buttons and looking for menu options. So right now you can see here we have some folks on. Many people are using their cameras. Everyone's having a good hair day, so they say, yes, let's turn on this camera. We have some other folks over here who are not, but we can still see who they are over here. As more folks join, it can tend to be contagious. As more folks join, that layout dynamically switches. So it prioritizes those who have chosen to turn on their cameras, but we can still see our colleagues who are not having their cameras on too. If everyone is feeling great, and perhaps if the big boss has mandated that everyone must turn on their cameras, for example, we can have quite the large view that automatically appears depending on how many people are sharing their cameras. So just making it very easy for you to sit back and focus on the conversation rather than having to manipulate the window to maximize the experience for what is happening in the moment. This also applies to when someone shares their content. So this is kind of a big advancement in my personal opinion and a much better experience for the people who are viewing the content that is being shared. So let's say in this example, this is me down here. I look significantly better than I currently do in this example. But this is me down here, and this is my screen that I am sharing with my colleagues. So we can see all of our colleagues who have their cameras on. We can see the others here as well. But we can also see the chat. And crucially, we can have all of our colleagues viewed up top. This is called gallery at top. This makes it much easier to maintain eye contact with your colleagues because they are physically closer to the physical camera on your device. So rather than having them down at the bottom, as has been the standard, we're now moving them up to the top with the gallery on top option. If you don't like that, of course, that can be disabled, but that is going to be rolling out soon. It's just a little bit more natural so you can keep that same kind of line of sight rather than looking all the way down to see your colleagues and then looking back up at the camera and looking down to judge their facial reactions. So it makes it much easier to be able to see. That makes it nice when you are watching the content, when you are being presented to. But what about when the spotlight is turned on you and you are the presenter? If you've ever been in this position, this can be, I mean, obviously, it's a nerve-wracking thing for most people anyway to do some sort of public speaking. But the technical component needs to support that as well. So PowerPoint Live is a fantastic feature that we are very excited to be able to roll out. If you have ever presented a PowerPoint from within Teams, you know that there are two options. You can present just the PowerPoint itself, or you can share your screen. However, when you share your screen and then you turn your PowerPoint into presenter mode, it tends to take over displays, sometimes in unexpected ways. And if you have 2, 3, even 4 monitors at your disposal, it's relatively easy to get that sorted out how you want and make it very easy to work out. However, having 4 monitors should not be a requirement to be able to present effectively. So PowerPoint Live gives you, as the presenter, a lot of information within the window of Teams itself. So I can see when I'm presenting with PowerPoint Live, my actual slides right here. So this is what everyone else is seeing. Those are my slides. But you'll see over here, for me, I can see my notes. So that I don't need to have a separate monitor, I don't need to have a separate device and try to be fumbling with seeing my notes, and I can still see my colleagues' faces as I am presenting. So this makes it very easy to have everything that I need as a presenter all in one place. And if people are interacting in the chat, I can still see all of that in real time too. That tends to be not a best practice, but a common practice, where people will be reacting to what is being said in the chat so that they don't interrupt. So there's often a lot happening over here in the chat, and if you as the presenter are not seeing that, you're missing out on your audience's reactions. So with PowerPoint Live, you can still see your slides, your notes, and even the chat as well. If you enable it, PowerPoint Live gives the option for your audience, your attendee members, to be able to browse your slide presentation, your PowerPoint deck, at their leisure. So if someone's like, can you go back to the previous slide? I didn't see what was on that. They can just do that themselves in their own view without having to disrupt the meeting. This is great for being able to kind of look ahead or look back, but it also means that there are some incredible new technologies that we can bring to that experience. So using PowerPoint Live and using the power of Microsoft Translation services, anyone can look at the slides that you are presenting and choose to display it for themselves in another language. So in this case, English is what I am presenting in, but if one of my attendees, if that's not the most comfortable language for them, they can use the power of Microsoft Translation Services to be able to change the actual text on this slide in PowerPoint Live to a more comfortable language for them. So very exciting and it brings lots of inclusivity features and possibilities for being able to present to various different audiences, particularly around the world, and just making everyone more comfortable so that they can get the most out of the experience of being in this meeting. Looking and feeling your best is also important too. So we have some new presenter modes that we are introducing that are going to be going live soon. Currently, as it stands, if you share your screen, if you share a deck, you end up as a little itty-bitty postage stamp kind of down here while your slide deck dominates what everyone is able to see. We wanted to kind of change that so that people can interact and feel more connected with who is actually speaking. Because typically, when you're giving a presentation, whatever is on your slides should just be supporting what you as the person, as the human, are saying. You should not be second fiddle to the PowerPoint deck that's dominating the view. So this is side-by-side mode. These are, again, the new presenter modes that are going to be available soon. So as you can see, of course, the person who is presenting is side by side with their deck so that we can very easily see and judge their facial expressions, their body language, and very easily see the content of their deck as well. We also have reporter mode, so that over-the-shoulder, on-air TV news sort of look, again, using the technology that we have for our background replacement, but being able to place the actual content on the PowerPoint slide above and behind the shoulder. And finally, you can actually use the PowerPoint deck, the slides that you are presenting, essentially as your background with standout mode. So you appear with our background replacement technology and our artificial intelligence enabling that, superimposed on top of the PowerPoint slide, so it's very easy to see who is speaking and the content that they are presenting. Now, even with all of the incredible dynamic view capability that we are bringing, there is still the view switcher that is available. So it's not like you are now losing control of what the view is. You can still have this little icon right here. We call that the view switcher. So you can customize that view according to however you want to experience your meetings. So we can do things like gallery at top. There's focus, where we can, if people have their cameras on and I don't want to see them necessarily, I can click on that focus to just focus on the content that is being shared. I can go full screen to maximize my full screen real estate, and there's some additional options there. Large gallery mode, and of course that crowd pleaser together mode as well if you want to return to the Greek amphitheater. Now, we saw that in PowerPoint Live, we have Microsoft Translation Services that are going to be able to actually change the content and the text in a PowerPoint deck. But we also have live transcription that is going to be available as well if it's not already available to you. So if you click on the little three dots here, the three ellipses, if you go down, you can start, start transcription. So this is what we saw before that will then be captured at the end of the meeting. So we can do that, and as I said, it attributes who is saying what to the individual speaker. That can be disabled if you are uncomfortable being tied to your words. That can be disabled in your own settings in Teams. But as a general rule of thumb, it's a good practice to stand by whatever it is that you're saying to your colleagues in a professional setting in a meeting. And so we encourage you, of course, to enable attributing your words to yourself. But this is great for accessibility and for being able to look back over the meeting too. Now, one of the things that we heard from customers is that they were using Teams and they wanted to do even more with it. They liked the Teams meeting experience. They like the experience of using those live reactions. They enjoy the chat. They are able to use the emojis. They like the Teams experience, but they wanted to do more with it, particularly in the format of a webinar. So launching very soon, you will soon be able to actually conduct a webinar style event from within Teams. So looking at it here, if we are in the calendar, To create a new Teams meeting, we would usually click up here, New Meeting. Soon, you're going to have this webinar featured there as well, in addition to schedule a meeting or a Teams live event. So webinar is coming soon. So when we do that, it looks like we are creating a new Teams meeting, but we have the option to create a registration form. So usually that's a very important component for a webinar. You need to capture the information of the people who are registering for this webinar. You're going to be advertising this, and you want to capture everyone's information. So let's go ahead and view the registration form. This is what it looks like here. We can do the event details. We can do like the event title, and then we have the description down here. So we can customize that. This is what the registry is going to see. They're going to enter their name, and they can upload, and you can upload an image to sort of brand this experience for the people who are registering for this webinar. Let's go ahead and add a background image. I want to upload an image. We'll choose our logo here at Fabricam Design in this example. We can even change the scaling of this to make sure that it looks good. And then there it is. My logo is now part up there. So this is what everyone is going to see when they come to register for the webinar that I am scheduling. This is a big deal, and it even ties into Microsoft Dynamics 365. Because typically a webinar is not a standalone event. Sometimes it's one touch point along an entire customer journey. So that can all be managed from a comprehensive sort of perspective from within Microsoft Dynamics 365, and this can be one component of the customer journey that you are using to kind of expand your reach and your integration and engagement with customers. And so this webinar experience is going to, it has a lot of people capability, up to 1,000 person with interactive controls, and up to 20,000 people as a view-only experience. So that is huge for being able to have an uninterrupted experience for what you are trying to convey for your audience. But then if someone wants to raise their hand, you can unmute them, but then you can have everyone else be on mute, so there's no uninterrupted surprises or unexpected or unwelcome surprises throughout the course of your webinar. So very easy to be able to maintain a professional sort of webinar from within Teams without having to pay for an entirely separate service. It's also a familiar experience for, hopefully for you as a Teams user yourself, but for the people who are going to be joining the webinar too. It's not even a whole new platform. They're familiar with the controls, and so they can focus on the content that's being shared rather than being like, oh, how do I turn off my microphone? How do I raise my hand? Do we have live reactions here? Can I change my background? It's already a familiar experience for the people who are joining. So that was just like a little look at some of the things that are coming in Teams. Hopefully you are getting the message, if you will, that this is a massive area of investment for Microsoft. Even more is coming, and the release cadence is extremely fast. So we are looking forward to being able to offer even more for customers who are using Microsoft Teams. We looked at a handful of these things. Teams multi-geo support is coming if it's not already live. So it can be targeted to a specific department, even down to an individual user. If their user data needs to be in a certain location, particularly now through this remote and hybrid work that we are experiencing, if you have picked up international employees, or some of your formerly national teammates have now moved internationally, and there are data privacy laws, for example, that can all be accommodated within Microsoft Teams. So quite a bit happening, quite a bit being released this month, quite a bit being released on the very near horizon as well. If you have any questions, as always, please let us know in the chat. So what does any of this have to do with Surface? So Surface is a relatively new endeavor for Microsoft. We started doing this in 2012, so almost a decade now of experience of creating our own hardware, our own computers. Previously, the only thing that we did was write software. So getting into the computer hardware game was quite a departure for us. The reason that we chose to do that is because we wanted to push the boundaries of what was possible with a PC. We wanted to bring natural interaction to the PC experience so that you could use the device however you want to in the moment and have it adapt to you. So you can use a keyboard, you can use a mouse, you can touch the screen with your finger, or you can write on it with a pen as naturally as though you were writing with a pen on a piece of paper or in a journal. To be able to deliver on this lofty goal and this promise, we knew that we had to do a lot of work, and we did not nail the experience completely the first try that we did, but we have iterated on it because we believe in it so completely. And so to be able to deliver this promise of an integrated, first-party hardware and software experience that brings the additional benefits of pen and touch to a world-class laptop experience, we turn to our human factors group, better known as our Department of Human Data. You can see studying spatial audio here. Audio has always been very important for us at Microsoft. We actually built the quietest place on Earth, according to the Guinness Book of World Records. We call it our anechoic chamber. I have never had the pleasure myself, but apparently most normal humans can only take a few minutes before they're like, get me out of here, because there's a complete or near complete lack of sound that we are that we're unfamiliar with to experiencing. This is helpful for things, obviously, as you would imagine, like Surface Audio. We test our Surface Audio devices, all of the components that we use for our audio, the individual components themselves, and then how they sound once they are installed in the chassis of the devices that we are making. The microphones as well, our studio microphones, we tune them here in the anechoic chamber. But it's not just for the technology that we use this. We're also studying the actual human voice, because to be able to study the human voice in near complete isolation means that we can then recognize the human voice very precisely when it is against, for example, a backdrop of unwanted background noise. So using this technology and this data to be able to craft a unified hardware and software experience from an audio perspective. When we launched Surface, we chose to emphatically make Surface a premium device. And people often misinterpret what premium means. They think, oh, that's fancy, or it's flashy, or it's showy, or something like that. And that's not what we mean when we say a premium device. We define premium as paying attention to the details that matter. So the typing experience. We knew that we had to create an incredible typing experience on a device that has a removable keyboard. We said people are not going to use this, it will not work. The typing experience needs to be exceptional. So we have always prioritized things like that, the details that matter. That includes things like the cameras, the microphones, and the speakers. This has always been prioritized in Surface. And people began to realize that at the beginning of this pandemic. Previously, it was somewhat rare across the board for people to turn their webcams on for a video call. So in many cases, they had no idea what the quality of their webcams built into their devices were. And some very high profile, not to be named other manufacturers have been cutting corners on the quality of webcams using laughably low resolutions for years and still selling premium devices that have these laughably underpowered webcams, for example. We have always prioritized the quality of those details that matter. So when people were using their Surface devices in Microsoft Teams calls, it's like, oh my gosh, you look really good. And then a colleague using another unnamed premium device looks like they're joining us straight from 1980. That integrated hardware and software experience and the premium nature of Surface means that people are going to have a better experience when they are using Microsoft Teams features from their Surface. They're more likely to jump on that call, to turn on their camera and have a conversation with their colleagues. And because the hardware works so well together with the software, the quality of the cameras, the dual far-field studio microphones that we have, the omnisonic speakers, we can hear the inflection in our colleagues' voices. And so even though we are looking at and speaking to a device, the device disappears and we're just having that conversation with our colleagues. So this is our entire Surface product portfolio. It all started with the Surface Pro, the idea of a two-in-one device, meaning a device that could function as both a laptop and a tablet, but just be one device, so you're not juggling multiple devices. From there, we have expanded into several two-in-ones. We have a variety of laptops, as well as an all-in-one desktop computer and the Surface Hub that you see me actually using here in person next to me as my co-presenter. I'm going to give you an extremely brief overview of these devices. Surface Pro 7 Plus is one of the newest additions to our lineup, but the Surface Pro form factor has always been our most popular. You can pop the screen directly off of the keyboard. It's a world-class laptop. You can hook it up to external monitors, but then have it be used on the go. So you can use the same programs when you are standing, for example, or you can recline the screen all the way down into studio mode and draw and write on it and take notes in your own handwriting in something like Microsoft OneNote. Surface Pro X is another 2-in-1 device. It's even thinner than the Surface Pro 7 Plus, and it uses unique processors that we created with our friends at Qualcomm, the Microsoft SQ1 and SQ2 processors, to enable this very large screened device with very thin bezels on the side. It's extremely thin, it feels amazing in the hand, and it runs Windows 10 on ARM. Now the Surface Go 2 is our smallest 2-in-1 device. Excuse me. It's the same concept, but it has a much smaller screen. But again, it still runs the exact same programs that anyone using a standard desktop computer is using. But I, as a frontline worker or someone in a warehouse taking inventory, looking at shelves, can be using that exact same program in a tablet form factor. So there's no need to write a separate tablet version of that program. We heard from customers that they were interested in the premium nature of Surface and the first-party experience that it provides, but some people did not want that extreme flexibility that a 2-in-1 provides. They preferred a more traditional laptop or clamshell experience. So Surface Laptop 4 for Business is the actually newest member of our Surface device. It provides an exceptional laptop form factor while still providing a touch screen so that you can touch the screen, you can pinch to zoom, you can scroll, and you can even use Surface Pen on Surface Laptop 4 to sign your name or to participate in a Microsoft whiteboard, for example. Surface Laptop Go is our smallest laptop form factor. The Surface Laptop 4 is available in 13.5 and 15-inch screen sizes. This comes in at just a little bit over 12 inches in screen size. Very approachable from a price perspective, but still very capable. It's a small device, but it runs 10th generation Intel Core i5 processors, available with up to 16 gigs of RAM. I know, speeds and feeds. So it's extremely capable, and it's a very portable device with a very approachable price point. Surface Book 3 is another of our laptop-style devices. The actual screen, though, detaches from the device, so you can use it as a standalone tablet, or you can reverse the screen, reattach it to the keyboard base, and take advantage of the discrete graphics card hidden within the keyboard base. So it's certified for things like Adobe Creative Cloud and other computer-aided design programs. Now, Surface Duo just launched in the UK and in Ireland, and we're very excited about this new form factor in a device that is always with us. The processing power of the phones that we have with us is not really the limiting factor. It's how we interact with them. And so being able to have two screens that we can use completely independently or together enables new ways to work on the go and actually be productive with a device that fits in your pocket. Surface Studio 2, of course, that all-in-one desktop computer. I'm showing you the back because it looks great from behind, but it also reclines all the way down into studio mode. So it essentially turns into a digital drafting table. So this is fantastic for people like illustrators, architects, engineers who are used to using that drafting table experience. They can have that experience using their standard, industry standard design programs, but having that natural and organic interaction that a pen provides. So that brings us to Surface Hub 2S. It is available in 50-inch form, which is what I have physically next to me here, and also 85-inch form. Now, Surface Hub 2S is a somewhat unique device. We designed it with the idea of being able to erase the boundaries between in-person workers and remote workers. As you can imagine, this conversation has come to the forefront over the past year or so. So as we think about people starting to return to their offices, it changes things, right? When everyone is remote, everyone is on the same footing. Everyone has the same advantages and disadvantages. So everyone's kind of on equal ground there. But what happens when some people, a minority, or maybe the majority of people start to return to offices, but we still have those remote colleagues? How can we ensure that everyone is on equal footing? And from an organizational perspective, we're getting the most out of everyone. Everyone's voice is being heard and contributing to the conversation. It's very easy to communicate and collaborate with Surface Hub 2S. It's very natural to gather around this device. It comes with a 4K wide-angle camera. We can very easily have a Microsoft Teams call with our colleagues. We can very easily have a Microsoft whiteboard session where people in the room are drawing on the Surface Hub 2S, but someone in another continent can be joined on that same Microsoft whiteboard, and we can be collaborating together in real time. It turns any space in an office, an unused corner, or a gathering area into a communication and collaboration space, which is different than a conference room. Conference rooms have their purpose. Sometimes it's different when you want to actually work together on something rather than come back and share the things that you've been working on. So if you want to have that collaboration session with your colleagues, Surface Hub 2S is able to provide that experience. There's a variety of mounting options. As you see, it can even be mobile using the Steelcase Roam mobile stand. There's even a battery available for it so that you don't even need to unplug Surface Hub 2S as you wheel it to where it is needed. We mentioned conference rooms. The Surface Hub 2S can essentially function as an all-in-one conference room itself, but it can also incorporate into existing conference rooms. And we're going to talk a little bit about Microsoft Teams rooms. So Surface Hub 2S can use proximity join. So if you have a Surface Hub 2S and you have already joined a Teams call on your phone, for example, or on your Surface PC device, and you come physically close to a Surface Hub 2S, it sees that someone on a Teams call close to this hub might want to use this hub to join that call. So using proximity join, you can very easily transfer the call to the Surface Hub 2S. You can also do coordinated join, which is where we have a Microsoft Teams room, which is this separate device right here, and an installed screen in the room on which we are seeing our colleagues' faces. But with coordinated join, we can add a Surface Hub 2S to that same meeting. All of the audio and visual is handled automatically so that there's no echo, there's no feedback, and it intelligently uses the screen real estate. So we can continue to see our colleagues' faces right here, but when we launch a Microsoft Whiteboard, for example, we see that here on the Surface Hub 2S. Or if someone shares their screen using a PowerPoint deck, we see that over here on the Surface Hub 2S, while we continue to be able to see our colleagues' faces on the installed Microsoft Teams room screen. So the reason that we have these Microsoft Teams rooms and that we have forged into this new area using third-party hardware vendors is because there was a need. As people are transitioning to Teams, they want to go all in on Teams. And of course, Teams is included in Microsoft 365 licenses and subscriptions. So people and organizations are seeing that they're able to drop separate third-party subscriptions for conference hardware and for conference services that they're previously used to paying for. It's all included in Microsoft 365. So a Microsoft Teams room can turn something like a focus room, for example, using this little console on the table to be able to join a Teams call that's on your calendar, or if the room itself has been booked out, and we can have that conversation right here with our remote colleagues. It can flex, of course, to something larger, like a conference room that is designed around in-person communication here, but we want to include others as well. It can even flex into a multi-purpose room that, again, we are including Surface Hub 2S's into this Microsoft Teams room. So there's a ton of extensibility and flexibility as far as what Microsoft Teams is able to provide, both from a software perspective, but also from a first-party hardware perspective with something like Surface Hub 2S, and even with third-party hardware through Microsoft Teams rooms. That leads us to accessories very briefly. There is a full line of Surface accessories. The Surface Audio that you saw tuned in that anechoic chamber. We have our Surface earbuds. But the new addition to Surface Audio is Surface Headphones 2 Plus, which are now certified for Microsoft Teams using the included USB dongle, which has an LED status indicator light so you can see the status of your microphone if you're muted or not, for example, at a glance. We also have, they're not Surface branded, but they are Microsoft modern headsets in both wired and wireless forms, making it very easy for an organization to standardize, for example, on a headset or a family of first-party headsets. We have the Microsoft Modern wireless headset, certified for Microsoft Teams, and the Microsoft Modern USB headset, which is a wired solution. I love the wired solution that includes this inline remote with a very obvious mute button that is red when you are muted and then green when you are live. Microsoft Teams button here as well as audio controls. Rounding things out, we have the Microsoft Modern USB-C speaker, so you can take that speakerphone experience on the go, and there's even now a new Microsoft Modern webcam. The built-in cameras and Surface devices are fantastic, but if people are using external monitors, for example, sometimes it's a little bit more advantageous to have that up on the external monitor that is probably dominating your attention, so that way your line of sight is closer. So that's a look at some of our Surface devices, Surface accessories, and how they integrate with the larger Microsoft Teams experience. The Surface devices that we have, they're really designed around use case scenarios. They're not designed around slices of a market that we think that we can go after. They're designed around the people who are going to be using them. So an all-in-one desktop computer, a portable two-in-one that you can use when you are standing and not at a desk, or that you can collapse down into studio mode and use with your own handwriting, so that you can use it in a meeting and take notes in your own handwriting rather than tapping on a keyboard, for example, when your colleague is telling you something. It's a more natural experience to be able to write that down. Your colleague knows that you're engaged and listening to what they are saying because you're writing it down, as opposed to if you're just tapping on your keyboard, maybe you're responding to an email, or maybe you're doing something else, even though you are engaged and listening to them. So with that, we have a bit of time left. I do want to make sure that I turn things over to Jonathan, who is going to be speaking to you from MJ Flood. Jonathan, hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us. I want to make sure that we have some time to hear from you today. Hello and welcome.
Thanks, Michael. Great to join the session today. Thanks very much for all that information you've just provided to our customers. Right, guys, just like to thank everyone for your time this morning. Firstly, to introduce myself, my name is Jonathan Finglas. I'm the Microsoft Practice Lead for MJ Flood Technology. For the next few minutes, I'll be discussing our partnership in terms of Microsoft and what solutions and what value we have anyone looking at Microsoft deployments. Just a little bit of background to our organization. MJ Flood was formed in 1999, and we've been a long-standing partner of Microsoft in a gold status from the offset of the organization. We currently have over 300 employees. We're headquartered out of Dublin, and we've got 7 regional offices around the country. Just discuss some relevant numbers that are relevant to today's kind of content from a Microsoft perspective. We have 110 and over 110 Microsoft Teams customers and over 10,000 Teams daily active users. We define our strengths into 4 pillars within the Microsoft ecosystem. Number 1, and most relevant again for today's session, is Teams voice deployments. We've created an end-to-end holistic approach to the delivery of Microsoft Teams. This encompasses the application, telephony integration, advanced call reporting, and also in terms of delivering that in-room collaboration experience. Number 2, and more prevalent than ever, we also focus on security and ensuring that in the remote world of work, organizations are using technologies from Microsoft, such as multi-factor authentication, conditional access, mobile device management, and everything is part of them hero SKUs that Microsoft labeled them as. Number 3, and the third pillar, is Azure Infrastructure as a Service, delivering decentralized, accessible infrastructure, adding security layers to your organization, and making that systems available from anywhere, regardless of your employee's location. And then finally, number 4 is delivery of backup and disaster recovery solutions. Obviously, very top of mind given the week that we've had so far, starting last Friday. But everyone being able to either back up the data, be able to recover a site from either downtime or indeed a cyber attack. Just to talk to some of our accreditations for a moment, one of the most important ones, and again more prevalent in today's session, MJ Flood are the only partner in Ireland to achieve the elite status of advanced specialization from Microsoft Teams and Teams calling. We are only one in Ireland, but we are also one of few globally to have achieved this status. Again, also we won the accolade of Teams Calling Partner of the Year for 2020 and hope to do so again this year. From a deployment experience, we work across private and public sector, and we work from the SME all the way up to the enterprise, delivering all sorts of Microsoft solutions across all sizes of organizations, including notable universities across the country. We feel that this is going to add strength and this market is going to grow even more significantly over the coming months with the return to the office and what Michael has related to as the hybrid world of work. In this hybrid model, organizations need to embrace the flexibility and empower people within their organization to collaborate from anywhere. Microsoft Teams, Teams devices, and Teams rooms, we feel, bridge the gap between in-person and remote attendees, ensuring that all users can be heard, seen, fully engaged. These solutions are designed so that even if you're working from home, you feel as part of the meeting as those in the room, allowing you to connect with your team more comfortably, clearly, and with all of the advances that Microsoft are bringing more naturally. Employees want to participate and feel included in the conversation. We feel from feedback from our own customers. They want to be able to share reactions, have their voice heard, and communicate effectively. Team solutions and devices enables this, as well as also offering participants, regardless of location, the ability to collaborate on the same digital canvas as colleagues in the room using Microsoft Whiteboard. MJ Flood are working very closely with existing customers and new logo customers on enabling this new world of work, whereby employees can have a seat at the table, regardless of where they actually physically are in the world. This again is delivered obviously in our expertise by our architects and our engineers, powered by Teams, but also powered by the Teams devices. In a webinar that hopefully some of you might have attended a couple of weeks ago, I presented a slot on return on investment with an effective Teams deployment. Again, commissioned by Forrester, the figures are very, very staggering, with a 261% ROI with a Teams and Teams voice deployment and a 3 to 6 month payback in terms of time frame for investment. It's evident that people on the journey to Teams and embracing on that Teams journey now, the tangible returns are evident. I suppose here in MJ Flood, we have the experience and capabilities over the years of building up and aligning with the Microsoft strategies to deliver across the Microsoft ecosystem and throughout the stack of M365. We ask of anyone on the session today, if you're looking at Microsoft solutions that attribute to our core pillars, or even if indeed you're looking at designing your own hybrid working model for your organization, is to literally just engage ourselves in MJ Flood. We'd be happy to assist you and help you on that journey. I'd like to thank Michael again and all of you for your attendees. I hope to engage with you and your customers, you and your organizations over the next coming weeks or months. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. That was a great overview of MJ Flood and the services that you provide. I love some of the stuff that you said there. I mean, so much of it comes down to feeling included, right? For the colleagues who are working at home, how do you not feel? How do you feel included in the conversation, having your voice heard when some or many of your colleagues are back in the office? And it's about more than just the individual feelings, of course, than the employees and workers. It's making sure that everyone is being leveraged to their maximum potential and making sure that everyone is contributing to that conversation to make sure that everyone is included and pushing the organization forward in the most effective and efficient way. So hopefully what you've kind of gleaned here today is that nothing that we've talked about exists in a silo. They're all fibers or strands of the same quilt. So whether it's hardware or software, whether it's actual Surface devices or Microsoft Teams or the Microsoft 365 experience that is empowering all of that, it is an integrated and unified first-party solution that is able to accommodate practically any tangled IT web that you either have, that you have inherited, that you have to use for whatever sort of reasons. We have outstanding first-party options for practically anything that you could imagine. But at the same time, we're extremely flexible. So if you are using other sorts of services, devices, they're all welcome in the Microsoft world, if you will. So if you have any questions, please let us know. It looks like the chat has been relatively quiet. I see a little bit of action there, but no specific questions. We'll hang out here on the line if you have any questions that you want to ask, anything that comes to mind. But it has been my pleasure talking to you here today. Thank you so much for your time. Hopefully this has been a helpful look at Microsoft 365, Microsoft Teams, and of course Microsoft Surface devices, and how they're all working together to enable the best experience in the hybrid work that we expect to become the norm in the months and even perhaps years ahead. So from Seattle, Washington in the United States, thank you so much for joining us. It's been my pleasure. Take care and enjoy the rest of your day.